He's got huge General Flynn, Mueller investigation stuff that deals with the whole investigation, not just Flynn. And then he's got huge news, obviously, with the Podestas, John Podesta and Tony Podesta, and the announcement that the lobbying firm is closing next Wednesday. Roger Stone, thank you for joining us, my friend.
Alex, great to be here. I think most Americans saw blaring headlines that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, had opened up an investigation into General Michael Flynn in connection with a $15 million Turkish kidnap plot in which it is alleged that Turkish interests engaged or spoke to General Flynn for essentially an extrajudicial kidnapping and extradition of a religious fanatic who not so long ago masterminded an uprising and an attempted coup in Turkey. It's also fair to say that the Gulen, as he is known, who was held up in Pennsylvania in the Poconos, is engaged in a myriad of other federal crimes. But ironically, the investigation into General Flynn stems solely on the memory of former FBI Director James Woolsey. The mainstream media tells us that Woolsey was partners with Flynn in his public affairs firm, and that he was the one pointing the finger at the general. Now, if you look at this stunning interview that he actually gave, he implicates he implicates Flynn, saying he heard in a hotel room when he came in at the end and Flynn was present, some discussion of an extrajudicial kidnapping. And then later in the tape, he attempts to back off of it as if he hadn't said that previously, and said, of course, that none of this was known entirety or in the first person. So he purposely maligns Flynn. Flynn has vehemently denied that he sat in on any discussion of kidnapping. He understood the angst that the Turkish had about the crimes of the Gulen in the United States, and yes, those should be brought to the attention of law enforcement. But Woolsey has impugned a good man, and that stunning interview shows his treachery. Here is the truth. Woolsey was never partners with Flynn. He was on an advisory board, uncompensated in Flynn's group. He badgered Flynn relentlessly about the ability to make money. He himself wanted the Turkish account, a $15 million lobbying account, perfectly legal. His wife, driven by greed and money, had actually told the Turks $15 million was the price tag, and they were incensed when they quite legally engaged General Flynn, for which he was paid $500,000, most of which my sources tell me went to subcontractors in an effort to educate the Justice Department about some things that the Gulen has been doing in this country that are illegal. So the entire thing here is because Woolsey, who Trump never likes, even on the campaign stump, Woolsey is a deep stater, Alex, who attaches himself to Trump. Trump does not want him on the road, only wants Flynn to travel with him. And indeed, Mike Flynn's representation of the Turks begins at a time that when he is a private citizen in private practice and spending all of his time campaigning with and for Donald Trump, almost 30 days on the road, introducing Trump at these enormous rallies. So I think a great American patriot is being framed here, and I think Woolsey is a deep state quisling who is doing the dirty work of the Bushes and the Clintons, is pointing a finger at an innocent man.
There's no doubt about all of that. And of course, you get that from your sources very high up. But expanding, we're about to go to break. What do you make of Brazil's come out? We've talked about it. Now Chris Hayes, now Wolf Blitzer. Basically, all of them are throwing the Clintons under the bus, something I've never seen before. What does this signify?
Well, the professional Democrats have figured out that the Clintons are a burden that they're just no longer willing to handle. Most of the anti-Clinton activity you see is being orchestrated by the Obamas, who are ready to turn the page to set the stage for a potential candidacy by Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama should not be underestimated as a candidate. We can make snide jokes about her all we like, but she commands a greater loyalty in the Democratic Party base, and the far left indeed, than Hillary Clinton ever did. and her husband controls the machinery of the Democratic Party. Joe Biden talking about running is a joke. Joe Biden is an enfeebled old man who can't keep his hands off of young girls and women, not his wife. It's quite creepy.
Well, that's the big subject I want to cover with you next. I mean, the Republican Party's nasty. It's corrupt. It's being removed. We're in a battle there. That's our real problem. But the Democrats, what does it mean when you've got all the Democrat media and things like Saturday Night Live turning against the Clintons? What does that signify? Straight ahead with Roger Stone. I'm Alex Jones with NewsWars.com. NewsWars.com. All right, coming up in the next hour, I'm going to air the 60 Minutes piece, and I'm going to air the CNN piece, and I'm going to air the Saturday Night Live piece, and others if I have time to get to them all. They're up on Infowars.com, where mainstream media is like, Bill and Hillary Clinton corrupt. They need to pay for their sex crimes. They need to pay for covering up the assaults on women. They need to pay for working with the Russians. They need to pay for working with the Chinese. I'm like, when did they become the Alex Jones channel? It's crazy. So what does that signify? Just Roger was on a few weeks ago. He said, hey, Hillary says she's going to run again in 2020. We're going to support our exploratory committee. And I said to Roger off air, I said, I almost don't want to give them our plan and make jokes about this because they still think Hillary's their girl. But now all of them are turning against her. The entire system. Meanwhile, at the very moment, the Republicans are trying to get rid of Roy Moore. And I'm not saying he's perfect. If he did the things they're claiming, then I say crucify him. But now some of the accusers have gone offline. Others are, Democratic Party operatives. All this other stuff's going on. My big issue is our big problem is the Republican Party. Just because we're defeating the Democrats and America's turned on them in a political realignment, how do we make sure we get good people in the Republican Party to turn this around? But Roger, what do you make of the point we've gotten to when clearly months ago I said they're starting to eat the Clintons, they're turning on them, they're going to use the Harvey Weinstein thing as a trigger to go after everybody. I mean, now that's happened. What is the next shoe to drop, and what do you make of the complete exodus against the Clintons?
I think this is a very key point, Alex, and that is many on the right have long believed that the ruling elite was monolithic and that they moved in total concert through their groups such as the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, and, of course, the Bilderbergers. That's not entirely true. They have their own intramural struggles. The Rockefellers always wanted ultimate power. They never got the presidency. The Kennedys had to fight the Rockefellers, and the Harrimans had to fight both of them for supremacy within the establishment. What you have here is a purge, very much like the purge in Saudi Arabia, where the hard left, who see the Democratic Party as their vehicle and long-term investment, realize that Bill and Hillary are dead weight, that Bill's rapes and his assault on women can no longer be suppressed, that Hillary's role in covering it up is now too widely known, that the epic scam of the Clinton Foundation, if they follow the path laid out by the brilliant Charles Ortel, will lead to indictments ultimately for the violation of multiple laws, because the Clintons indeed would steal a hot stove. Deeply resented in Obama land is the profiteering. It's not just, for example, that Hillary negotiated an agreement with the Obama administration regarding her contacts and handling of her foundation while she was Secretary of State, then made sure that the agreement was not legally binding, and then continuously violated it in violation of what she had agreed to with Barack. Is it surprising that Obama is ready to download this dead weight?
That's a really good point. So if I pull back from this, though, obviously they know their political party's in trouble. Getting rid of the Clintons now, that's a day late, a dollar short, as they say. This is a metastasizing cancer. Then they've got all these other corrupt interests in there as well. Why didn't they see this before?
Well, the Clintons hammerlock on the party money, and her standing in the party based on a very strong run against Obama gave her and the nasty tactics and air of inevitability. Professional Democrats, many of them whom I know and drink with, who despise her, supported her candidacy because the Clintons were notoriously vengeful. They were
sure. So what are they saying about her now?
Look, I think they view her as dead meat, but don't think that means they've changed their ideology or that they've changed their game plan to push a communist, socialist, leftist agenda.
And that was my next point. That was my next point, what you just said. They are trying to jettison her because she's not leftist and globalist and racist enough. They think she's posing as that. And so this shows how they admittedly have gotten even more radical and even more mentally ill.
Well, look, and I should address two other key points here. My sources tell me that the attacks against Judge Roy Moore, which are almost 40 years ago, these are not convictions. These are merely accusations looking sketchier and sketchier the more they are examined. I'm told that this was cooked up and packaged by the diabolical Karl Rove at the behest of Mitch McConnell. This is the payback for the pasting of their hand-picked candidate, Luther Strange. And they're endangering a seat for the Senate, and they don't seem to care. When McConnell called on Moore to withdraw, he knew legally that there was no way to do that, that his name cannot be removed from the ballot at this point, regardless of any statement.
What do you make of a lot of polls that are up on Infowars.com showing Moore has gotten even bigger lead since this happened? It looks like Alabamans are just sick of dirty tricks.
Well, that could be the case. In all honesty, it's a little soon to poll it because it's still nuclear. I mean, Roy Moore is trending, but someone has taken advantage of what is a national disgrace, and that is all these leftist hypocrites who claim to love feminism and be feminists turning out to be sexual harassers. I mean, Weinstein is no different than Bill Clinton, for example.
How would you grade Trump? I mean, Afghanistan, he said he wouldn't expand it. He did. He's been wrong on vaccines. He said he would try to expose it. He didn't. He's bad on WikiLeaks. I mean, let's say the things he's bad on. But overall, the elite hate him. He's got the economy going. He's bringing back free speech, anti-political correctness. I mean, what's good about Trump in 3 minutes? What's bad about Trump?
A record stock market, unemployment at the lowest point in American history, very, very aggressively trying to hack back regulations in all departments that retard job growth and economic growth. His head screwed on right, most definitely in terms of North Korea, understands that strength, peace through strength is better than marching off to foreign wars. My real problem, Alex, is that the high number of Bush alum, headed by H.R. McMaster and Dina Habib Powell, and particularly in the White House Economic Policy Council shop, are hardcore pro-NAFTA, pro-neocon, pro-Iraq war Bushies, and they unilaterally have found a way to, I think, mislead the president. We were supposed to be out of that.
And so we're getting a lot done thanks to his instincts, but when he's trying to pull from the swamp to make his government, he's being infiltrated at every turn, which means we've got to be vigilant, we've got to be focused.
Look, you got to support him when he's right, which is most of the time. You got to point out where his orders and his policies are being countermanded by a Bush-commanded bureaucracy out to undo what he wants done. I think he's doing extraordinarily well on the big picture stuff.
Let me get back to this briefly with you. What do you make of Mueller now that he's discredited, involved with the Russians, Hillary discredited again, back to the Podestas, shutting down their lobbying firm? I mean, what does that signal? Or does Mueller just roll forward despite the fact that he's basically, been caught in bed with Putin?
Look, I think Tony Podesta probably isn't guilty of that many crimes. If he is indicted for failure to file for the Ukrainian party he was represented, this crime is easily remedied by filing. He did file late, but he filed. And no one has ever been, to our knowledge, actually prosecuted for this. And if they were, it would be, generally speaking, a $5,000 fine and a slap on the wrist.
It's the same thing they're going after Manafort, so it's a political stunt.
It's window dressing. It's the way Robert Mueller convinces us, look, I'm bipartisan, I'm going after a big Democrat. Now, here's the problem. John Podesta told the Senate Intelligence Committee he knew nothing about the Fusion GPS, so-called dirty dossier.
That's the real crime, is the perjury on Fusion GPS.
And it appears that he was lying now that we know that he met with a Fusion GPS official who is talking to the government. So I think it is reasonable to say that John Podesta's time in the barrel may be about to come.
But not for what we're hearing about. All right, Roger Stone. We can only follow you on Twitter at Stone Cold Truth because they've banned Roger Stone off of there. You've got a lawsuit ongoing. So we'll talk to you again coming up this week during the weekday transmission.
No, I was very pleased to say that I asked Judge Andrew Napolitano to review the first draft of my lawsuit against Twitter, which has come from my team of terrific lawyers, and he really believes it's a 10 strike. He believes it's an extraordinary case for free speech.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Coming up, Christmas banned in TV ads in the U.S. and UK. I'm not joking. And Paris cancels Christmas market.